Well, hello and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. Today we are talking about prayer and relationships, prayer as relationship. We'll see you in a moment. Well, hello and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
And I'm Teresa Grodi.
We're back with another conversation about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. And wow, we're grateful that you're joining us for another one of these conversations. Before we get into the meat of today's topic, which is about prayer and relationships, I want to tell you about our sponsor, which is the Hallow app. If you go to hallow.app/awaken, you get a premium trial subscription of the Hallow app, which we love. We're listening to Father Mike Schmitz. It's just great for your Lent. Definitely check it out. But if you go to hallow.app/awaken, you get that free premium subscription and you also support AWAKEN Catholic. And so we encourage you to do that. If you like what we're doing here on this show and the AWAKEN Catholic ministry, please go to awakencatholic.org/donate. You can directly support us there and be one of our partners in this mission of sharing truth through beauty. And whether or not that you're ready to necessarily donate, nevertheless, we'd invite you to join the AWAKEN Catholic app. And you can get that by going to theawakenapp.io. We are a community of people trying to share the truth through beauty, to grow in our Catholic faith, to grow in our love of Christ and our service of one another. It's a great group of people. You can interact with the hosts and other members. You can discuss the topics we're exploring on these programs. It's a great place, a great service, and it's also the best way to get new AWAKEN Catholic content. So go to theawakenapp.io. I think that takes care of all the introductory stuff.
Yeah, actually, so the app just started streaming live some of the episodes, so you can see the episodes live while they're being recorded. Yeah. Maybe even sometimes weeks before we will. Yeah.
You can get a little
put them out
bonus content.
The peons.
You can pray with us before the episode even begins. Again, it's a great community. Check that out. So, Teresa, I want to talk today about prayer and relationships. You know, one of our models for discussion here on Elevate Ordinary is to take something ordinary and kind of connect it with something extraordinary, some aspect of our faith, and kind of look at how they inform one another. And I was thinking about this topic lately about prayer and relationships because a good friend of mine, a good friend of our family, Brother Rex Anthony Norris, who is a diocesan hermit for the Diocese of Maine, a diocesan hermit, that's a thing.
No, we have a hermit friend.
You've got a hermit. Mm-hmm. Do you have a hermit friend? Yeah, I mean, we're pretty cool like that. He pointed out to me, and it just, I'd never heard this before. I never thought of it this way. He pointed out to me that prayer is the relationship with God, and that actually is not just his hermetic opinion, but that it actually says that in the Catechism. And so I want to just read a bit from the Catechism right here. This is paragraph 2558. It's the beginning on the section on Christian prayer. Great is the mystery of the faith. The Church professes this mystery in the Apostles' Creed and celebrates it in the sacramental liturgy so that the life of the faithful may be conformed to Christ in the Holy Spirit, to the glory of God the Father. This mystery, then, requires that the faithful believe in it, that they celebrate it, and that they live from it in a vital and personal relationship with the living and true God. This relationship is prayer. So the Catechism explicitly connects this obligation we have as Christians, or this necessary aspect of the Christian life, which is this vital, dynamic relationship with our God that we're called to, but then connects it that relationship is, in a sense, prayer. Those two aren't really separate. They're kind of one and the same thing. And I got to thinking about that and thinking about how what we know and have experienced with prayer tells us a lot, gives us a lot of insight into our human relationships and how our understanding of human relationships, the different, through our trials and tribulations, are things that we've come to understand just living our human lives. Those teach us a lot about how we can relate to God better, how we can grow in that relationship better. So I wanted to just, with that connection that the Catechism makes, I wanted to bring those two together and kind of shine a light on each one and discuss them a little bit. So.
Yeah, I think particularly when I'm tempted to believe that God is someone who who is just waiting to pick out my faults, waiting to say, aha, you're prideful. Now you realized it. Grovel. God has given me such a great gift in my spouse and you, because if I think about presenting my fault to you, and you've seen my faults in every way, shape, and form, all the shameful things. But you, a mortal man, a man with sins, a man who is not God, when you look at me with tenderness and compassion and kind of like an attitude of, we're going to get through this. It's okay. We're going to get through this. You know, your sin. We're going to get through this. Those times when I am tempted to despair that God, it's like, she finally messed up enough that I'm just going to let her go. I know that if a mortal person, my husband, can be that merciful, I know intellectually, this is where like the intellect helps me. Like I know intellectually that God is thousands of times more compassionate and more wanting my good, wanting me to rise up from that terrible, shameful situation or whatever. So my marriage, has helped me incredibly in prayer, especially when I just don't want to look at God, Yeah. Well, sorry, was that too fast for the episode?
No,
Did we get to the meat way too fast?
It's good. It's good. You made me think about how, on the one hand, we all know that we're taught by the church, by Scripture, that we're made in the image and likeness of God. But maybe sometimes we don't always think about the fact that that's supposed to be an active vocation, that we are to image God to each other. We're to image God the Father to each other, his fatherliness, his magnanimity, his generosity. We're to image Christ, his self-sacrificing love, his charity, his mercy. Actually, this is a random, but it's connected here, that I heard on a podcast lately, someone defining scandal, the sin of scandal. Mm-hmm. We use that word here, but what does it actually mean? Scandal means to do something that gives another person a false image of who God is. That's what scandal does. So if you image God in a way that makes another person have this, either a conscious or unconscious, this sense that, well, God isn't really good or forgiving, or I'm not really enough, or he's not really going to take care of me, or I can't really trust that things are going to turn out well. If I give that person, I'm causing scandal. I'm causing that person to have a misunderstanding, a misrepresentation in their mind of who God really is. Whereas we're called as Christians to do the opposite of scandal, which is to give the best image we can in our example of who God really is. And so, again, relationships in so many ways are ways that we do encounter that, and we show that, and we experience that. Certainly in family life, in so many ways. I mean, we have kind of the theology of the body sort of way, where there's the lover and beloved and the fruit, or the love between them, kind of a deal. But, in terms of this specific topic of prayer and relationships, I just find it really fruitful for my reflection in looking from one to the other in this connection. One thing we've talked a lot about here, Teresa, is the sort of this quantity and quality time dynamic. That oftentimes there's emphasis in relationships. I need to have lots of quality time. We need to have more quality time. We need to get more quality time. We need to give more quality time to our kids. And what do we mean by that? We mean kind of this carefree timelessness, this real presence, this looking into each other's eyes, really being fully there and present to a person. And I don't say that flippantly, because I don't think those things are true, but we all know that we can have that ideal, but it's difficult. It's difficult to find the time. Even when you're in the presence of another person, it's sometimes hard to be present. And a dynamic we've talked a lot about is how you can't pursue quality time to the detriment of quantity time. It's actually the quantity time that opens up the avenue for quality time. You just need to be with people. Mm-hmm. You need to put it in that time first, just being around each other, just living life together. And then it's within that quantity time that you find those moments of real connection.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes in terms of parish life.
Yeah.
Like, we've both worked in parish capacities before, and you're thinking like, why does it work sometimes with some groups of people and then with other groups of people or other programs or whatever. It just doesn't work. And I remember realizing at one point that, and I mean, this isn't the end all be all for parish life, but just that quantity time, non-program time is absolutely necessary to building vulnerability and friendship. Yeah. You can't just have 60 women show up at the Bible study each week and expect that they're going to have meaningful, deep relationships that are going to go into their regular life, because at the Bible study, you come with your best and you come on game and you do your homework, and that's not reality, And so then it's kind of scared to you get a little scared letting people in when you're always quality timing it. Right. You need the quantity time. You need showing up at someone's house when they're yelling at their kids or, whatever's going on, where you enter into their reality situation and you love them or they love you in your reality situation. Yeah,
that's so good. So Teresa, apply that to your spiritual life. Apply that to your prayer life. My spiritual life. What's the analogy with that? The scenario that you just kind of walked us through? Yeah. So as a mom now, I know I talk about this a lot. We have 5 kids. Oldest is not yet 10. So I went from having a life of being able to do as much spiritual and liturgical stuff as I possibly could. And I packed it in there and I did all of the things. And I don't regret that at all. Right. But when motherhood, I got a lot of quality time. But now, I'm glad you asked me this question. So now as a mother, I have fewer moments of silence, of quiet. And even when I do have silence and quiet, I'm still and I'm sure other mothers can recognize this, you go to have a quiet mass and you're still just kind of you're practically shaking and it gets you to the end of your adoration hour and you're like, oh, finally I can be with our Lord. And then you got to go back to the babysitter, and to the chaos. And when I started to give my tiny amounts of time, whether it be in the shower while I'm shampooing, or going to the bathroom because it's the only quiet time I ever have, or something very small, or I'm just going to say the Angelus real quick. I'm going to close the door to the bedroom, hope nobody falls off of anything while I'm in there taking this time for prayer. And what I noticed is that when I gave the times of prayer, not always, I began to have an increase in I don't know if this is the right word to say it, but an increase in either consolation or mystic encounters with God, where it wasn't just me praying anymore. It was truly God taking advantage of that tiny sliver of time I have given him. And he gave me a revelation to my personal self, what I needed there in his faithfulness. So I spend a lot of quantity time in my vocation. Dripping with kids and husband and dog and house and laundry and cooking and stuff. But God, when I give him those tiny little moments, he's able to make the quantity out of it, because he's another person. Yes. He's another person. This isn't, I hear people say in marriage prep, marriage takes 3, there's 3 people in your marriage and God is one of them. And when I hear that, I think to myself, that's nice symbolism. We're kind of we're going to leave room for God, I'm sorry. I just got to look at myself when I did that. And I looked like one of those 50-year-old chastity speakers who's trying to look cool to the kids. I look like I'm sure the kids all think you look quite cool.
So, okay, leave room. That's where we were. But it's real. Mm-hmm. He's not a pretend person that I leave a pretend space for at my dinner table. He's a real and active person in our marriage whose voice I can recognize, whose discernment and whose peace is something that is as tangible to me now in our sacrament as you are. So I don't know how that ties into anything that we're talking about. Make this work.
No, it's so good. There's so many threads here, because again, that's what I find this to be such a fecund connection here, a fruitful mental connection between prayer and relationships, and prayer as our relationship with God, because we see so many connections between our struggle, our journey of improving our human relationships our relationship as a couple, our relationship with our kids, our relationship with family members and friends, with our prayer life, especially if we acknowledge the breadth of that term prayer. I think one thing that we can fall into in our relationship with God is only, again, thinking that prayer, the engaging in this relationship with God, is only one very specific kind of thing, one very specific kind of quality time. Like, it's only if I can go to Mass, or only if I can go to adoration, or only if I'm having this really intense experience of God's presence. Well, no. What we're actually called to as Christians is for those specific instances of liturgical prayer and prayer of the presence of God, that, those moments that God gives us. Those are to spill out and make increasingly our whole life is to be a prayer. In other words, to really live in the presence of the real person of God, no matter what you're doing, so that everything you do is a prayer. I mean, again, taking it back to relationships, okay, sometimes we sit and talk, and sometimes we need to. Sometimes we don't need to. Sometimes we just be together.
While eating chicken wings and watching The Office.
Well, sometimes we do that kind of prayer too. I'm not sure how that exactly translates to God, but the point being, that like sometimes when you go to adoration, sometimes people are intimidated by going to adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. This is a thing for Catholics. We go before the Eucharist, which we believe is Jesus Christ truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity.
The bread at church.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I want to take it down to the lowest level. After the priest consecrates.
Lay it out for us.
We believe that it is Jesus's body, blood, soul, and divinity. So we worship. We worship it.
Yeah.
We worship him.
Yeah. And so we have this practice of adoration, which is outside the context of Mass. We go and simply pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament. But some people are intimidated by that because when they hear, go and pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament, a holy hour, that's what we call it. We go do a holy hour. Well, a whole hour. What am I going to say that whole time? How do I fill up that whole time with talking, especially when God doesn't usually audibly talk back to us? Well, here's the thing is, you don't have to go and say anything. Just go sit and be with God. Like, that's enough. Mm-hmm. And sometimes
because he is another person.
Yes.
And his presence does, when you do that, I did a lot of that in college when I would get off of work at the bar and it'd be really late and I'd be really tired and I'd been on my feet all day. Yeah. And I would just go to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel, and it was close, very, very close to the chair, the tabernacle was. And I would just sit. And over the course of weeks, months, it became really apparent to me, to my senses, that there was another person there. And I didn't do anything but just sit exhausted and maybe say hi, or something like that. I didn't pray, I just sat.
Yeah.
But the actual presence of God became so tangible to me.
That's interesting. I'm not sure if I've acknowledged that before, that there's a connection between our two spiritual journeys, our two stories. Because I went through kind of my period of doubt and wrestling with my faith a little bit during my teenage years. My journey ended up being a very intellectual one. Like, I got into philosophy, and I wanted to really understand what it meant to have faith in God. I wanted to know, was knowing that God exists, was that a point of faith, or is that something we can come to know through our reason to be sure about? So many questions around that. So it ended up being a very intellectual journey. And the intellectual journey led me all the way up to the edge of faith in Christ. Like, I really came to believe through my reason, through my exploration of the world and of my life and of the reasons of the nature of the universe, that God existed and that Jesus had existed and that he had claimed to be God and that he had formed this church, and this church had persisted through the centuries and in many miraculous ways, and now was presented to me and led me all the way up to that edge of but then can I put my faith in this person, Jesus Christ? And the last leg of that journey for me was simply many hours spent sitting with Jesus in the chapel, just being with God. And again, I wasn't sure if I knew how to pray. I was still trying to figure that out. Like, what does it mean to have a relationship with this God? And so I sometimes I would use words, but sometimes I would just be with God. And that's how I came to know God. I came to have a relationship with God. I came to have the sense of God's presence and as an active, dynamic person in my life. But again, taking it back to relationships, again, we the quality and quantity time stuff. How do you get to know people? Mm-hmm. Sometimes if we put too high of a premium on this quality time with people, we don't put in the quantity time, just being with them, just sharing life with them. You know, I think I do this with the kids a lot. Like I want to sit down and have a profound conversation with them. Like, I have something I want to teach you about, son, you know, and like, he's just not there for it because up to that point in the day, we've been fussy and I haven't been listening to him and we haven't been spending time together. And now I'm expecting to suddenly have, you know, this perfect quality time with him. Mm-hmm. It's silly. No, I need to put in the time of just being with him, having fun with him, laughing with him. And it's in the context of that quantity time as a family that we have these moments, you know, where the kid sort of reveals his or her heart to you or something like that. You know, I think that teaches us a lot about our spiritual life with God because God is another person. I'm going to read another bit for the catechism here. So this is talking about different kinds of prayer. Broadly speaking, this is paragraph 2699. The Lord leads all persons by paths and in ways pleasing to him, and each believer responds according to his heart's resolve and the personal expression of his prayer. However, Christian tradition has retained three major expressions of prayer: vocal, meditative, and contemplative. They have one basic trait in common: composure of heart. This vigilance in keeping the word and dwelling in the presence of God makes these three expressions intense times in the life of prayer. So vocal prayer, and that would include, I think, like our liturgical prayer. You know, we're saying the things we're supposed to say. The church gives us these beautiful words, these calls and responses, you know, these routines and rhythms of word and gesture with our body that we run through. And those are, as Father Jeff Walker on the Men's Show likes to say, the Mass is meant to be not
oh no, dead air.
It's what is it?
Sorry, no pressure. No pressure.
Oh yeah. Okay. The Mass, as Father Jeff Walker on the Men's Show likes to say, the Mass is not meant to be expressive. I don't go there to express myself. It's meant to be impressive. It impresses itself upon me. The words, the gestures, the doctrine and teaching that are baked into it. It's impressive. So that's vocal prayer is necessary because it's kind of like the quantity time of our time with God. It's where we go through the motions, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Our heart may not be in it a particular day, but we show up and we say the words and we listen and we respond and we kneel and we stand and we kneel again and we do the Catholic calisthenics. But what that's proceeding towards is our heart, that being impressed upon our heart, so that we're more open to the ultimate kind of prayer that it's all leading to, and that's this contemplative prayer. That's where our prayer, our words, our gestures sort of fall away, and we just are in the presence of God, and He does something. He speaks. He makes His presence known. He impresses Himself upon our heart.
And in that time of contemplation, you are fully receptive. Yeah. Like there's two. It's not just, and I think that many times it does come from grace, the fact that you're open and receptive, but in those times of contemplation, He is revealing, but you are fully receptive.
Yeah.
So I wrote my master's thesis on Marian Apparitions. I went to a secular school, Bowling Green State University, and I kind of became known as like the Marian Apparitions girl. Like somebody saw Mary in a tortilla chip, call Teresa.
And you're like, thanks, guys.
I'm like, that's not...
Oh, sure, whatever.
I guess that's how people think those things happen. But for those of you who don't know, Marian Apparitions are these phenomenon in history where Our Lady, the Mother of Jesus, appears full body, as if, I'm standing here in front of you, to people. And they've happened all throughout history. The first instance was like in AD 40, so maybe it was a bilocation. Maybe Mary wasn't even dead, but she was appearing in Spain to St. James the Greater. I don't know, St. James. All the way up to our present times. And so I chose to write my math. I had my conversion. I was studying Abraham Lincoln, who I still dearly love. But I had chosen to change and do the history of the church and to write my master's thesis on Marian Apparitions. And I got some backlash from secular people, but I got a lot of backlash from Christians because they would ask, why, when Jesus has come, why would Our Lady need to appear? And why would she need to appear so many times? Why is it necessary? Why does God see it necessary that she comes? And after a while of just contemplating this question that I would get a lot, it occurred to me, like I really tried to feel it, because again, I have no interior monologue. I get a lot of impressions, and then I try to put those impressions into words. And it occurred to me that, like, God is Father, God is male. And sometimes it's hard to submit yourself to a man, especially if you're a man or you have issues with authority, or we're all broken people. But everyone knows who a mother is. Even if you didn't experience what a mother should be in your life, you know what a mother should be. You see it in nature. You see it in natural human relationships. And when you can't submit yourself to a male authority, to a man, like, a mother melts even the hardest of hearts. That relationship, that natural relationship that God gives us, a mother, is how he will do anything to get us. I really think it's a way that he melts hearts so that we are open to him and we can trust him.
Well, that's where we begin the episode too, about how, again, our relationships and even our archetypes of human relationships, fatherhood, motherhood, God has given us those to teach us something about him, and then he gives us, in Mary, gives us this motherhood par excellence, that we receive. I to kind of bring this in for a landing here, I want to ask you, the audience, to reflect and to share with us your thoughts on these, but we'll reflect on these as well. So the question number one is, in your human relationships, your marriage, your family, your friendships, especially when you're busy, especially when it's hard to carve out the quality time that your heart longs for, how do you build those relationships? Like, what are some of the things you do to carve out time for those relationships, both in terms of the quantity and the quality time? Like, what are some of the things you do, especially when that's difficult, at difficult parts of life, stages in life, busy vocations?
That Leah Labresco episode.
Yeah. Do
something that you do alone with other people. So if I'm cooking, or if I'm preparing a huge batch, 20 freezer meals or whatever it is that moms do, we fold laundry, get together and have a laundry folding party, or do something that the habit that you already have, include somebody else in it. Nice. That takes no additional time out of your day. Yeah. We have, I think, lots of examples from our life. We're blessed to be able to, both of us spend a lot of time at home. We homeschool the kids, and not everybody has the same model, but we all have to figure out for our life, how can our family spend a lot of time together, and again, not putting too much of a premium or expectation on the time, to make dinner together, to do the dishes together, to do the yard work together, doing things, as you said, that would be separate, doing them together. That's that quantity time. That's that showing up and being with someone that paves the way for a greater self-revelation, a greater intimacy, but that step along the way. And so that's the first question, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and your ideas about it. How have you worked that out in your life? What are some of your tips? But then question number two is, again, relating that then to prayer. How do you do that in your relationship with God? When prayer is difficult, when you're a busy, flustered, anxious person, you can't, flip a switch and necessarily be contemplative sitting on a mountain, no, you have to, how do you begin to carve out the quantity time for God? And to keep God with you, to live your life more in the presence of God, so that you're open more to that, again, that contemplative prayer, that presence of God that he wants to give you. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Teresa, did you have any thoughts on that? I always have thoughts, and a great willingness to give all advice to all people all the time.
Think what you would think separately, together with me. Yes.
Oh. Well, first, find the time of day when you're most able to engage in mental prayer, and somehow add time to that. So for example, like if you can get up 15, 20 minutes earlier, if you're just a morning person and it's easy for you to be mentally clear in the morning, for me, that's when it is. That's when the kids are not with me. And nighttime, I'm just too darn tired to even think straight. And all I want to do is watch TV. So morning is my time. Another thing that I do is I set an alarm I call it my Hail Mary alarm. And I set an alarm for a specific time during the day. And during that time, like I have a special ringtone for it. Like it's a beautiful Ave Maria. And I just stop. I take that little like mindfulness moment, like where you just stop and you're like, okay, we're all going to pray now. And then we pray. And then life kind of continues at a different pace after that, because you've had that like mindful pause, coming to your senses, as you like to say, being present in the moment.
In that section we read earlier, that was great, Teresa.
Thanks, babe.
No, you made me think of one of the quotes they include there. I think this is from Teresa of Lisieux, that she writes, "Prayer is the raising of one's mind and heart to God, or the requesting of good things from God." And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about not getting caught up on too narrow a definition of prayer. Prayer is any time that you're raising your heart and mind to God. Anytime you acknowledge that God is real and He's present, and whatever I'm doing right now, I'm doing in His presence, and I can invite Him into that. I can do that with an awareness that He's there, even if I'm not saying anything. That's a form of prayer. It's a powerful form of prayer. So some of the ideas that came to my mind, we like to practice the heroic minute, which is that,
I don't like to practice
it. When the alarm goes off, try to get into the habit of, first of all, winning that first moment of the day by actually getting up and not hitting the snooze button. But the very next moment, turn the attention of your heart to God. Acknowledge that He's there and that this day is for Him. So begin the day with this moment of prayer, even if there's no words exchanged. Just be aware of God's presence. Begin the day there. So that's a good one. I think what you were saying about the time for mental prayer, the time for specific prayer in your day. One of the most important things is simply to have that plan. Don't worry about the quality of that time. Don't worry what you're going to fill it with, and don't worry about it being necessarily long enough. If it needs to start with 1 minute, if it needs to start with 5 minutes, then so be it. But make it planned and make a commitment to it, and get back to it even if you miss it or it gets messed up.
I just went back to my college days. Yeah. When I first had my conversion, I would literally go into the bathroom in my college, whatever building I was in for my classes, and I would, obviously shut the door to the stall, and I would just take out my prayer book. And I would say my prayers I made that little toilet space in the most secular of places. That was my little prayer chapel, because, you're running around from classes to classes doing things. I worked full time in school. And so it was just like, I could just be quiet in that little space and no one could see me. It was like shutting the door to my, to your room and praying in your corner like Jesus tells us to. So that's something that anyone can do. If you're out all day, you're at a job, you're in school, whatever, you can go to the bathroom and you can close the door and take out your prayer book and say a prayer.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
You look uncomfortable with that.
No. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else. I had some more ideas.
Okay, I was like, crap, I crossed the line.
I love that example. No, because it's precisely, as you said, applying that what makes sense to us in human relationships to a relationship with God. Do what you would do alone together with somebody else.
I was standing and praying. I wasn't I was praying while I was going to the bathroom.
Everything that you do can be a prayer. Everything that you.
We should end this.
We should land this puppy. Oh, I have more ideas, and I'm sure you have more ideas as well. Again, how you bring quantity time, leading to that quality time into your human relationships and into your relationship with God. We'd love to know your thoughts about that. Thank you again for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary. Hope it's been edifying to you. Let us know what you think. As I said at the beginning, I wanted to remind you again that if you like what we're doing here on Elevate Ordinary or here at Awaken Catholic, please go to awakencatholic.org/donate and become our partner in this work of sharing truth through beauty, through the media. And also download the Awaken app. TheAwakenApp.io is the link that you can get information about that. You can also download it from the app stores. We're a community of people who are sharing this media, are sharing these discussions, who are challenging and encouraging each other to live out the faith and to go closer to Christ. It's a growing, beautiful community of wonderful people. We'd love you to be a part of it. So go to the awakenapp.io and also download the Hallow app at hallow.app/awaken. You get a free premium subscription to that awesome prayer app, as well as support our ministry at the same time. It's a good thing to do. So any last words, Teresa?
Nope.
You looked like you had something to say.
No.
Thank you for joining us.
Stop talking.
We'll see you again next week. God bless you.
Bye.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.